These are the 10 times Meg Griffin deserved to go to jail. We begin at number 10 with the episode titled Criss Cross, where Meg turns Criss to her personal slave. So Criss is getting tired of being bullied at school because of the sneakers Lois bought for him, and to save himself from further embarrassment, he requests for new shoes from his parents. But they do what most parents typically do. They deny his request, informing him they are short on money.
Yeah, I even had to take a second job as a door-to-door vacuum salesman.
Desperate for new shoes, Criss steals money from Lois's handbag, thinking that no one is watching. Unfortunately for him, Meg sees him in the act.
Busted.
Now she's going to make his life even more miserable. It's not as if Criss enjoyed stealing the money. He actually looked really sad while doing it. But Meg doesn't care about that. Now that she has some dirt on Criss, trust Meg to take advantage of the situation.
How about I won't tell Mom and Dad about the money if you promise to do whatever I say?
Now, that's a really bad deal. But since Criss is scared of being exposed, he agrees to the blackmail, and Meg hands him a comprehensive list of all the things she wants him to do for her. It seems like she took her time to plan it all out.
She's right. I'm a horrible person.
Criss does her assignment and cleans up her room, which I believe he detested doing. But if Criss thinks that's enough to get off Meg's hook, then he doesn't know his sister too well. Next, Meg forces Criss, who is now her slave, to watch a movie with her.
At the end, when Richard Gere carries Deborah Winger out of the paper mill, you have to read what's on this index card.
Next, Meg asks Criss to help her put on her contact lenses. But Criss is too much of a scared puppy. He messes the whole thing up.
Where are you? I can't see anything!
I don't like this. Just wear your stupid glasses.
Criss, I'm blind!
I'm sorry, Meg.
I'm sure Meg would want revenge once her eyes are fixed, even though she knows Criss is just a naive boy who can't seem to get anything right. Well, that doesn't matter. Next, Meg tells her personal slave, or rather Criss, to stand outside Planned Parenthood for 36 hours to take pictures of every girl in her class who went there. If you are wondering what Planned Parenthood is, well, it's that type of clinic you wouldn't want your teenage daughter going to. But Criss's time as a CIA agent isn't over yet.
Good. Now I want you to call them as if you're their dead baby.
You've gotta admit, Meg is really creative, just in the evil genius creepy kind of way. Criss tries to back out, but Meg isn't done with blackmailing him.
I own you.
Ultimately, Criss becomes fed up with being Meg's property, so he stands his ground and refuses to go along with her scheme. But just when we think Criss is about to act like a real man, he decides that the best move is to chicken out and run away.
I don't care. Tell him, because I'm not even going to be here. I'm going to run away and no one will ever see me again.
Good. Go. And who's even gonna miss you? You're just a little thief. Where you going, Criss?
So, Criss follows up with his decision, but he isn't exactly all that smart, so he turns up at the front door of Mr. Hubert.
Hi, I ran away from home. Do you mind if I live with you?
Late that night, Mr. Hubert, who we all know is a creep, begins to have some weird plans for Criss, but an unexpected fart saves the day.
Sorry.
You really know how to waste a Cialis, don't you?
Who could have thought farting could be such a lifesaver? The next morning, Lois tells Meg to go call Criss down for breakfast, and she quickly tells a lie to cover things up.
I think he got up early. He, said something about a fat kid rally at Little Caesars.
Really? The best thing you could come up with was a fat kid rally? Meanwhile, still the naive kid that he is, Criss messes up Mr. Hubert's house and leaves the old man ranting.
I'm sorry. Well, can we watch Lost Boys? I've heard of that one.
Those are different Lost Boys.
Let's hope it's not what we are all thinking it is. Now, in a desperate situation, Meg goes out looking for Criss.
No, Carl, I'm looking for Criss. I've looked everywhere and I can't find him.
Huh. I haven't seen him, but I'll keep an eye out.
While Criss is busy turning Mr. Hubert's house into a junkyard.
Can you just cook something here?
Excuse me? I am not gonna cook you dinner while you sit here in your own mess playing your TV game.
Fed up with Criss's bad behavior, Mr. Hubert throws Criss out of his house. Fortunately, before Criss does something stupid, Meg runs into him and apologizes.
I'm really sorry, and I want you to come home.
I thought you said no one would miss me.
Chris then goes on to give a heart-touching sermon. At number 9, we move to an episode that begins with news about a hurricane. Due to the bad weather conditions, the TV loses signal, and the entire family is stuck with each other for days. Well, you know how frustrating it can be when you are trapped with your parents and siblings with nothing to do. After struggling with boredom for hours, Peter suggests a silly game to lighten the atmosphere.
Oh, hey, I know. Let's play finger bang. Bang, bang! I'm gonna finger bang you, Chris!
But when Meg tries to join in, she's rejected for no reason. The rejection hurts Meg so much that a few hours later, she explodes into a full out-of-control tornado. And when Meg loses it, you know it's going to be a nightmare for the others. They should have just let her finger bang whoever she wants. So, while Peter makes funny, annoying sounds in a poor attempt to hum the opening chase music from the Indiana Jones movie, Meg opens up a soda can, and Peter, who was clearly disturbing the peace of the house, complains about how annoying Meg's soda can sound is. And then, Meg unleashes the beast.
Oh, that was annoying? What about your stupid, obnoxious humming?
If you think that was harsh, you have no idea what's coming next. When Lois and Chris jump in to defend Peter, Meg starts to feel as though the entire family is ganging up on her.
You guys all think you're so much better than me.
I could understand why Meg feels that way, but still, it's no excuse for what she does next. The whole situation quickly escalates into a full-blown argument between Meg and Chris, where she lets her fat brother know exactly how she feels.
What if I started calling you a fat, zitty loser who has no friends and smells like an old woman who has birds for pets?
Oh, common Meg. That's a really hurtful thing to say to your brother. But please, go on. It's quite entertaining.
Is it too much to ask to be treated with a little decency from my brother?
No, it's not too much to ask. But you do the same thing. You are not exactly the most decent when it comes to how you treat other people. And when Lois tries to step in to settle the dispute, Meg turns around to face her.
How about we talk about Chris's mother, huh?
Feels like she's been keeping a whole lot in and it's time to vent. So Brian, who the whole time has been hallucinating after eating mushrooms, walks into the living room and senses the negative energy. In her defense, Lois once again takes a shot at Meg, an action she would come to regret a few moments later. Still, in the season of unleashing ballistic missiles on anyone who crosses her path, Meg lets it fly against Lois.
Is this coming from my role model mother? The shoplifter, the drug addict, the porn star, the whore who let Gene Simmons and Bill Clinton go to town on her?
Okay. That's taking things a bit too far. And to think she was saying all these to her mom? Don't you think Meg deserves to be cooling off in some jail cell? Lois breaks down and apologizes to Meg for making her feel less of herself and for being a bad mother. Unknown to everyone, the worst was yet to come, as next on her list is Peter. Oh, strap on your seatbelts because it's about to get really exciting.
You're a fat, lazy, abusive, blue-collar Irish Catholic dad who drinks way too much and barely makes enough money to support his family. You've lived half your life and you have nothing to show for it.
Ouch, that must have really hurt Peter. But Meg doesn't care. She goes on and on and on at Peter, whose sarcasm doesn't bail him out this time. Following Meg's outburst, the whole family, who at this point have become enemies, turn against each other. Chris even has the balls to take a few shots at Lois.
Well, I don't like your cooking.
Oh, Chris could just be right though. The entire Griffin family, who we know can barely stand each other on a normal day, turn in on themselves like a pack of wolves. After the entire shit show, Meg has a heart-to-heart talk with Brian and then goes on to apologize to everyone. So, did I mention that after Meg's outburst, Peter locks himself inside the wardrobe crying? Yes, he did. Now, to the episode Don't Make Me Over. At the school cafeteria during lunch with her friends, Meg's crush, Craig Hoffman, walks in and her friends convince the visibly smitten Meg to go ask him out. After a bit of hesitation, Meg goes over to Craig, who quickly turns down her proposal before calling her a dude.
Am I ugly?
Lois tries to support her daughter, but when Peter, who we all know struggles with self-esteem, says,
Craig Hoffman.
Craig Hoffman said that? Well, he's a sharp kid. You might be ugly.
oh man, Meg breaks down completely. Now, you wonder what kind of father Peter is. So to cheer Meg up, Lois takes her shopping for new outfits, with a particular emphasis on low-rider jeans to show off her cute butt. Maybe, if Craig sees just how cute her butt is, he would reconsider. At the mall, They both struggle to find an outfit that makes Meg look cute. Luckily, the local TV network planned to do a free makeover for the ugliest woman they find in the mall, and it turns out to be Meg.
It looks like we've got a winner, Tom.
At least Meg is winning at something. The makeover does the trick, and Meg is completely transformed into a smoking hot chick.
Welcome to the family, sweetheart. Go burn all Meg's old pictures.
Now, Hot Meg returns to school to find all the boys hitting on her. Even Craig, who only recently rejected her proposal, has a change of mind and comes to ask her out. The Cool Girls squad is not left out as they invite Meg to be a part of their crew. Meg is living the life. Meanwhile, Peter and his friends, after having a lucky break while singing karaoke at the Clam, form a band. But their first performance, which happens to be for inmates, is a total disaster. They are so bad, they can't even entertain prisoners, who we know should get excited at just about anything. With the audience fuming and becoming hostile, Meg steps on the stage and captures all their attention.
Mom, can we please just get out of here?
Oh my God.
Who is she?
The family quickly forms an emergency band with Meg as the lead singer. Their performance is so electric it lands them a record deal. All of a sudden, Meg becomes a famous pop star and we see another side of her.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with Meg being exploited that way.
Shut up, Mom. It's not your decision. I want to be exploited.
Her overnight fame quickly gets into her head and she becomes very disrespectful towards her mom.
Lois, go grab me another bag of Skittles.
Excuse me, young lady?
Did I freaking stutter? I said more Skittles.
So Meg isn't comfortable with Meg's new attitude. But Peter's got no problem, as long as they are rich and famous. Such an easy-to-please father. The band gets invited to perform on Saturday Night Live, but Meg ends up on Jimmy Fallon's bed. Oh.
Wow, Jimmy. That was everything Ladies' Home Journal said it would be.
Didn't know Meg was that cheap. Sadly, the whole show is broadcasted live on TV, leaving Meg completely shattered.
Mom, Dad, he used me for comedy.
Turns out, Lois was right all along. After the chaos that unfolds, Meg returns back to her boring, not-so-popular self, and the world is back to normal again. In Road to Rupert, Peter stupidly loses his driver's license after trying to pull off a James Bond-type stunt, which he fails miserably.
Morning, Peter. I'm here to revoke your driver's license.
What? Why?
Oh, man, this sucks. I got no license. I can't go anywhere.
He then takes out all his frustration on the TV, destroying it in the process. Now, bored and stuck at home all day, Peter becomes a pain in Lois's butt, who would rather he left the house. To save herself from further stress, when Lois walks in on her annoying husband hiding in the fridge, she appoints Meg to be his personal driver. Anything to get him out of the house.
So you'll be happy to know I got you your own personal driver.
My own driver? Holy crap, that's awesome. Where is he?
She's right here, Peter.
Peter doesn't like the idea, but Meg is open to being her father's personal chauffeur. Embarrassed to be driven around by his daughter, Peter won't stop whining like a sissy the whole time.
Dad, it's just you and me in the car.
Don't remind me. It's bad enough I got a suspended license. I got to ride around town with stinky McPoop pants.
If you are thinking this is the part where Meg loses it, you are wrong. She surprisingly handles the tantrums quite well. To piss Meg off even further, Peter invites all the boys to ride along, and they wouldn't stop running their mouths with tales of pervert adventures until it eventually gets to Meg.
God, will you guys just shut up back there?
But they all ignore Meg and instead begin making fun of her. Peter then takes it even further by setting her hair on fire. Like he actually lit her head on fire. If you thought Chris was dumb, then compared to Peter, Chris might just be smart. Anyway, at this point, Meg is fed up with their games and now steaming with anger. She abruptly stops in the middle of the road and takes out her anger on the unfortunate driver of the car that runs into her.
What the hell is your problem, you dumb bimbo? God, stop!
That was awesome.
In her defense, he called her a dumb bimbo. That's not a nice thing to say to a teenage girl with anger issues. Back at home, Peter takes the tales of Meg's exploits to Lois, who insists that she apologizes to the man, but Peter surprises everyone by rising up to her defense.
Meg Meg, how could you do that? You should call that man and apologize.
Hey, don't you talk to her like that. Meg's as cool as the other side of the pillow.
This has to be the first time Peter is standing up for Meg, so Peter and Meg continue their father-daughter cruise around town, after which Peter becomes emotional. Eventually, he gets his license restored and returns back to his mean self, although he claims this time it's only for appearances.
You'll probably go back to treating me like crap, huh?
Well, maybe just to keep up appearances in front of the family, peer pressure and all that.
Peter is one confused fella. Alright, now to the next episode, titled Not All Dogs Go to Heaven. This episode begins with the family attending the annual Quahog Star Trek convention. While everyone's having fun, Meg seems uninterested and lost.
Dad, this is stupid. I'm so bored.
But Peter, who never seems to care about Meg, brushes off her complaints. He then forces her to take a picture with a stranger against her will, mistaking his mumps for a mask.
What? You came to a Star Trek convention with the mumps? You could be infecting people with a disease.
All thanks to Peter's cluelessness, Meg contacts the mumps and is bedridden. Stewie and Chris seize the opportunity to make fun of Meg. Stewie even takes a picture of her and sends it to a friend of his. So, to keep Meg entertained while stuck in bed, Peter, who's dressed like an astronaut for fear of contracting the disease, wheels in an old television.
Peter, what the hell?
I don't want to catch the mumps, Lois. Here's your TV, Meg. It's a little old and there's no remote and it only gets one channel and it's not on that channel right now.
Peter would also go on to humiliate Meg, tossing her food at her like she's some kind of beggar. At least he kinda cares, even if it's just a little. While in bed, Meg finds religion after watching Kirk Cameron on TV. So, after 5 days of being bedridden, she recovers from her ailment and joins the family for breakfast. But this time around, she's different. Meg is now a Christian.
Meg, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about God, Mom. I've been reborn.
However, Meg wouldn't stop talking about her newfound faith and all the things she learned from watching Kirk Cameron. She even politely requests that the family say a prayer before breakfast. And Peter says the most ridiculous prayers ever.
Dear Lord, please give me the cheat codes for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I have been stuck on Bald Bull for 4 years. I tried left, up, B, dodge, uppercut, but he still knocks me out.
Now a devout and pious Christian, Meg is trying to impose her religion on everyone. While the family is watching a TV program, she walks in and, without seeking anyone's permission, changes the channel.
Meg, what the hell? I was watching that.
It's time for Kirk Cameron, and I think it's important for all of you to hear his inspiring message about the Word of God.
Well, Meg, I think it's rude to force your faith down on everyone's throat. Lois tries to talk to her about moderation and about maybe being less rude and forceful about her beliefs. But Meg quickly explodes, accusing her of speaking like an unbeliever. Meg then turns to Brian, who reveals that he is an atheist, a revelation that leaves the entire family in total shock. Even Lois, for a brief moment, turns into a preacher.
No, Brian, it's one thing to bash organized religion, but we believe in God in this house. I mean, an atheist, that's just about the worst thing a person can be.
Brian suddenly becomes the devil himself to the entire Griffin family.
Guys, I'm just trying to say...
Shut up, beast! I have dominion over you, and I command you to believe in God.
Oh, I don't think Peter has any idea what he is doing. Plus, everyone seems to be forgetting that Brian's only a dog. Meg, however, is persistent. So, much later, she walks up to Brian, hoping to change his mind by giving him a cross. With Brian still refusing to be converted, she invites Kirk Cameron's brother to come preach to Brian.
Don't you want to tell Brian about Jesus?
They got my picture up at the drugstore and they won't sell me any Sudafed.
With Brian refusing to start believing in God, Meg reports him to the TV network, who instantly tag him as Hitler. Oh, man.
Channel 5 News has discovered that there is an atheist among us.
Local churchgoer and junior Christian soldier Meg Griffin has identified the atheist as Brian Griffin of Spooner Street.
Shocking that it made the headlines. Brian is furious at Meg for exposing him, but she's unbothered. Soon enough, thanks to Meg, the whole town of Quahog turns on Brian. To make it worse, no bar would sell the alcoholic dog a drink, and we all know how Brian loves his alcohol, with Brian almost falling into depression. Because he is being starved of alcohol, he tricks Meg into believing that he now believes in God. He then pleads with her to spread the news around.
I feel the warm, healing liquid presence of God's genuine cold-filtered grace.
Smart, cunning dog. Thinking that Brian has been converted, Meg takes him to the local church to do the work of God, which is actually just burning books they think are unholy. Eventually, Brian convinces Meg that there is no God.
If there were a God, would he have put you here on Earth with a flat chest and a fat ass?
I'm made in his image.
Really? Would he give you a smoking hot mom like Lois and then have you grow up looking like Peter?
Funny how Brian is able to convince Meg so easily. Well, Meg isn't so hard to convince. Next is the episode Dial Meg for Murder. Following the death of Quahog's Channel 5 newscopter pilot, Drunk Billy, Peter decides to enter the Quahog rodeo, ignoring Lois's warnings, even though he has no knowledge of horse riding and is in terrible shape.
Who says I couldn't be a rodeo star? I got more cowboy blood in me than Billy the Kid.
Despite his half-hearted attempt at preparing for the rodeo, which includes tying a rope around Meg and dragging her down the stairs, Peter's performance turns out to be terrible, as he ends up being bullied by his horse. However, during the rodeo, Brian meets with a teen magazine editor who offers him a job.
Well, we're looking for someone to write a piece on the everyday activities of the average American teenage girl.
So Brian decides that Meg is the perfect fit for the article. To do that, he has to study Meg for a full day, not as if a lot happens in Meg's boring life.
You know, Brian, just because you're writing a profile on teenage girls, it doesn't mean you have to be a creepy stalker and follow Meg around all day.
Brian takes his project rather seriously and stalks Meg all the way down to Quahog Adult Correctional Institute, where we discover that Meg's life isn't as boring as we earlier thought. Turns out, Meg is dating a convict, and she's paying her boyfriend a visit.
I will, Luke. If it takes 10 years or 20 years, I will be here when you get out.
Talk about a partner in crime. Remember the last time Meg snitched on Brian? Well, this time around, he gives her a taste of her own medicine. Brian tells everyone Meg's little secret. As expected, Lois disapproves of her daughter's romantic choices and tells her to call it off.
Well, it stops now.
But Mom, I love him!
It stops now, Meg.
As she often is, Meg is heartbroken and crying in her room when she hears a knock on her window. Well, Luke has escaped from prison and has come seeking refuge with his lover. Meanwhile, Brian comes to apologize to her only to discover that she is hiding her boyfriend.
You can't harbor a fugitive. That's a felony.
To make things even worse, Peter walks in and finds out about Luke, who immediately runs away. Quickly, Peter calls Joe and reports the situation to him. Joe chases after Luke, who was dumb enough to run downhill while being chased by an officer in a wheelchair. Now we see why Meg loves him. Luke is arrested, and so is Meg, who ends up in prison for harboring an escaped convict. Of things you do for love. Meg spends 3 months in prison and returns home as a gangster.
I'm home. You're all my bitches now.
Okay, now a gangster, Meg gets straight to work, marking her territory by beating the hell out of Peter. She sure knows how to hold a grudge.
There better be beer in the fridge.
Next, Meg walks in on her father taking his bath and,
You told me not to worry about it! I should have been worried the whole time!
Let's pretend we didn't hear that. Still acting as though she's in jail, Meg keeps a poop bucket by her bed. It's scary how the smell doesn't bother her.
God, it smells horrible. Well, can you at least empty it each time you use it?
I like to fill it up. I'm not making a million trips.
Next, Meg walks into the cafeteria and the cool students, as they always do, make fun of her. This time, she doesn't respond. Instead, she quietly fills up a bag of soda cans before smashing their heads. Whoa. The new Meg is both unpredictable and scary. Ever since she's gotten out of prison, she's completely out of control. For cracking the skulls of the kids, Meg gets suspended from school. Back at home, she walks in on the family talking about her change in behavior. Unfortunately for them, she hears a part of the conversation, but everyone, like the cowards they are, deny their involvement, keeping all the blame on Stewie, who gets punished.
Punch yourself in the face. All right, he doesn't know what he's doing. You fatso, punch your baby in the face.
Gotta admit, Peter is a weakling. Meg then takes her grand but poorly planned scheme to the next level by kidnapping Brian. whom she intends to use as her getaway driver after robbing Goldman's pharmacy.
Hands in the air, Goldman!
Oh my God! What are you doing?
Give me your money!
I don't think she's skilled at armed robbery. In the end, Brian intervenes and shows her his article.
A fistful of back knee, tale of a teenage loser?
And somehow, she has a change of heart. Surprisingly, Meg hands over the gun to Brian and returns back to her boring old self. Next up, we catch up with Meg in the episode titled Barely Legal, where she runs into the house in tears because no one wants to go to the dance with her.
Even my backup guy had plans!
When she threatens to kill herself and even goes ahead to pick a knife, Brian decides to be her date for the school dance.
Brian, will you go with me?
Are you gonna kill yourself if I don't?
Yeah!
Negotiation 101. Never give the other party an option. Brian follows through with his promise of being her date, looking all sharp in a tuxedo, with weed carefully stashed in his pocket. Well, better be ready for whatever happens, because even he realizes that Brian isn't hot enough for him.
God, this is gonna be a long night.
Even a dog can't stand to be seen with Meg, so Connie and the other girls come to make fun of Meg. But this time around, Brian stands up to them on one of the most insane tongue lashings I have ever seen.
That once your body's used up by age 19, you're gonna be a worn-out, chalky-skinned burlap sack that even your stepdad won't want.
Oh, never knew Brian could be this mean. Next, Meg does something totally unbelievable. She kisses Brian. Talk about being desperate for love. The next morning, filled with the intense passion of new love, Meg starts acting all weird around Brian, and Stewie, who is present, can tell something's off. She is so desperate, she even sends the dog a romantic text.
Wait a minute. Something did happen last night.
Meg is clearly a hopeless romantic. While she's head over heels for her dog, Brian isn't so into her. What she doesn't realize is that the kiss only happened because Brian was drunk. Infatuated, Meg hurriedly goes ahead to propose a very strange idea.
We should totally be boyfriend and girlfriend.
Hold on, Meg. I don't think that's possible. Need I remind you that Brian is a dog? Well, Meg doesn't care and forces Brian to accompany her to the mall, where she introduces him to her friends as her first serious boyfriend. At the mall, Brian tells her that the kiss was just a mistake and that they are better as friends. But even with Brian's admission, Meg is unwilling to let the dog go. She wants Brian, and she's going to do anything to have him. Realizing that she has just been rejected by yet another love interest, Meg locks herself in her room, crying. Worried about Meg, Brian decides to tell Lois about everything, including the kiss. As you must have already figured out, Lois becomes upset.
What the hell is wrong with you, you sick bastard?
Oh man, maybe that should have been directed at Meg. Trying to straighten things out with Meg, Brian goes over to her room where we find out the true extent of her obsession. Oh, like seriously, she has pictures of Brian littered all over her room.
I made that for you, Brian.
Meg has completely lost it. So, Brian breaks up with Meg, or I don't know if that's the right word, but the dog lets her know that he can never be attracted to her because she's a psycho bitch. From standing up for her to being the one calling her crazy. Such an inconsistent dog. But she is still unwilling to let Brian go. She knocks out the dog and kidnaps him.
Mom, is it bad if I saw Meg tie up Brian last night, put him in the trunk of his car, and then drive away?
What?
Chris is as clueless as ever. Turns out, Meg took Brian for a creepy, exclusive date. Only that her date is all tied up while she tries to molest him. Someone needs to step in and stop her at this point. Thankfully, at the right time, Lois and Peter, who just recently graduated from police college, storm right in with Joe and the others.
But Mom, I love him!
Shut the hell up. Meg deserves jail time for molesting her dog. In the end, Lois, with the help of Quagmire, talks Meg out of her obsession. Now to another episode where Meg's obsession takes center stage. Like most teenage girls, Meg is always crushing on one boy or another, except that sometimes she also crushes on her dog. This time around, we catch up with her in the school cafeteria when her latest crush walks in. Remember, that's exactly how it started with Craig Hoffman, right? Yep, well, like the last time, her friends tried to talk her into making a move, but Meg doesn't give in to their suggestion.
Oh my god, are you still obsessed with Kent? Just ask him out already. The worst that could happen is he says no.
Are you kidding? Of course he'll say no. There's no way he'd ever go out with me.
Meanwhile, Stewie and Brian invade her privacy by stealing her diary and going through it. Now that should be a criminal offense. Well, from the diary, they find out about her crazy obsession with Kent.
Hey, look at this. Kent is so incredibly sexy. He said hi to me today, and I almost died.
Wow. So back at school, Meg's obsession continues. As on her way home, she's almost hit by a car because she's lost in her thoughts of fantasizing about Kent. This incident only makes her more determined to ask Kent out. But first, she seeks advice from Lois.
Of course it's appropriate. It's also sad and desperate, and I would never do it, but you're not me, are you, sweetie?
Good advice, Lois. Well, since her mom thinks it's appropriate to ask a boy out, Meg goes ahead to call Kent and he agrees to hang out with her.
I can't believe it. Oh my god, I'm going out on a date with Kent, last name. Yes, 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 yes.
Kent shows up at Meg's house to pick her up for the date, and he makes quite an impression on everyone, including Lois.
He seems nice.
Sorry, I missed all that. I was tweeting.
Throughout their movie hangout, Meg tries to get all touchy with Kent, but he seems uninterested. Her last gasp attempt to kiss him even makes the whole thing more awkward.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Oh my god, I thought you wanted—
I didn't think this was a date.
Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed.
Now, let's clarify. Meg thinks it's a date, but Kent is just being polite. Plus, he doesn't find her attractive because he prefers Chris.
I'm gay.
You are?
Look, I really like you as a friend, but to be honest, I like Chris.
Someone's crushing on Chris, but Meg can't even get her dog to like her. Poor girl. The night ends in tears for Meg as she tries to share her predicament with Brian, who would rather be left alone drinking his beer. But Meg is unwilling to let things be and decides once again to force her object of attraction to like her.
Well, I'll help him figure things out. I'll help him figure out that he's straight.
When Meg gets like this, you know she's about to do something crazy. While Kent is trying to flirt with Chris, Meg interrupts them both, bent on convincing Kent that he isn't gay. Meg then spends the next couple of days trying to force Kent into liking her, even though Kent made it clear to her that he is gay.
God, this is getting too weird. I can't be your boyfriend. In fact, I don't even think I can be your friend.
Like so many times before, Meg is left heartbroken, and we all know that heartbroken Meg is a dangerous Meg. Her friends try to talk her out of her obsession, but instead, she comes up with a stupid idea.
If I can't have Kent, then that's the next best thing. I've just got to get Chris to sleep with him.
She doesn't seem to care that Chris is straight.
Forget it, Meg. I can't just do stuff with another guy. I'm not Derek Jeter. I like girls.
Chris turns down Meg's proposal, but her mind's made up. Desperate to make it happen at all costs, Meg comes up with a plan to drug Chris and then have Kent have sex with him while he is asleep. Fortunately for Chris, he does something kind for Meg and she changes her mind. Only that Kent isn't aware of the full plan, neither is he aware of the change in plan. So, when Kent sneaks into Chris's room, he finds Chris wide awake and confused as to what's happening.
Oh my god, Kent, I just texted you that the plan was off.
Meg, what the hell were you planning on doing?
Meg really has no control of herself when she is desperate. She even tries to get her brother raped. Unbelievable, right? In our next episode, like so many times before, Meg returns home complaining that she has no friends. Only that this time she blames it on her bag. Simply because a girl at school called it ugly, Meg then tries to trick Peter into buying her a luxury bag.
Daddy, if you really love me, you buy me a Prada bag.
But Peter isn't the type to fall for such trickery.
You wish I loved you that much.
It's no secret. Peter doesn't love his kids. So to raise enough money to buy herself the bag, she decides to get a job. When she's rejected by the local restaurant for her lack of experience, Meg pretends to be Stewie's mother to win some sympathy, and it works as she gets the job. That's actually kind of smart. Realizing that playing the role of a single teenage mother is an easy way to get customers to give her heavy tips, Meg continues in her games.
Welcome to Flappies. Why don't you have a seat next to my little baby whose deadbeat dad doesn't pay child support?
Meg's plan is a win-win for both Stewie and her, because Stewie gets to eat as many cakes as he wants, while she gets to walk home with a purse full of tips. And with each new customer, Meg comes up with a new story.
This is the first time he's eaten something other than dog food in 3 weeks. Well, here's your check. God bless.
Might have well just turned into a street beggar. So Meg's scheme appears to be working perfectly until a busybody customer decides to do more than necessary.
Sandy Belfort, Child Services. We're placing this baby in a foster home.
Having raised enough money from tips, Meg returns home with her brand new luxury bag, unaware that Child Services has taken custody of Stewie.
Meg, is that a real Prada bag? How in the world did you make $1,100 as a waitress in 1 week?
By using Stewie as bait, Stewie ends up in a foster home with 6 other toddlers, each from a different race. Ever the troublesome baby, Stewie proves to be a handful for his new foster parents, simply because they didn't give him pancakes. Apparently, a week of eating free pancakes at Flappy's has turned Stewie into an addict. At least he is still better than Brian. Meanwhile, Lois and Peter are working round the clock to regain custody of their baby, but it's proving to be quite a difficult task. With Child Services refusing to return Stewie back to them, Lois and Peter, with the help of their neighbors, come up with a decent plan to kidnap Stewie.
Fine, Debbie. Go, Chris.
Here we go, Dad.
While Cleveland and Joe distract Stewie's foster parents, Peter slides in through the roof and informs the kids that he is Santa Claus, causing chaos among the toddlers.
But you are right. Jack and Sarah told me Santa is Indian.
Don't be stupid. Santa is black.
Well, if we are being honest, no one cares what color Santa is. Peter then gets caught trying to kidnap his own baby. How ironic. Peter still can't be relied on to get shit done. Lois tries to explain to Stewie's foster parents how they got into this mess in the first place, but they are unwilling to let him go unless they trade him for something.
Is that a real Prada bag?
Such greedy foster parents. Isn't that supposed to be illegal? So, Meg trades Stewie for her Prada bag. In the end, Meg is back to square one, but at least Stewie returns home. Much ado about nothing. Now to our final episode, The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair. Bonnie is going out of town for a few days, so she asks Lois to help her look after Joe and Susie. But Lois is unwilling to do it herself, so she smoothly transfers the responsibility to Meg, but not without a little lie.
And Bonnie said you were very pretty.
But
Lois knows her daughter quite well. With her ego well-oiled, Meg agrees to look after Joe. On her first day helping Joe out, she loses track of the time and misses the school bus. Joe then volunteers to drive her to school, and on the way there, they have quite a decent conversation. Joe's polite and kind to Meg, and it doesn't take too long before she becomes lovesick.
Hey, who's that? Your boyfriend?
Yeah, that's my boyfriend.
There goes Meg, being desperate again. The next morning, Meg is back at Joe's house as early as she can. She's also dressed to impress.
What's with the getup?
Oh, nothing. I just wanted to look sexy for Susie.
We all know who she's trying to look sexy for, and it sure ain't the kid. When Meg calls Joe by his name and he doesn't object to it, she starts to feel as though he also has some feelings for her.
He let me say it twice now. It's like we're married.
Now completely into Joe, Meg takes it to another level, calling Joe honey. How many times is Meg going to fall desperately in love with the first man to stare at her twice? She never learns. To impress Joe, Meg puts on Bonnie's outfit. When Joe goes to get himself a drink, Bonnie calls to inform Meg that she will be on her way first thing in the morning, but Meg refuses to pass the message to Joe. Instead, while Joe is asleep, she steals his gun and car keys and drives all the way to the airport to hide the gun inside Bonnie's bag.
Ma'am, this bag contains a concealed weapon. I'm gonna have to place you under arrest.
Unaware that his wife has been arrested, Joe takes Meg to dinner to appreciate her for being kind. If only he knew what she just did. But during dinner, Meg, who is obsessed with Joe, starts to sound crazy.
We haven't made love in 2 weeks.
You haven't made love ever.
Oh, great. Now you've upset the baby.
Meg then goes ahead to breastfeed Joe's baby. Now that's disgusting. What has gotten into her? Worried about Meg, Joe heads over to the Griffin's house to report that Meg has a crush on him, but Lois and Peter brush it off, though not completely, as Lois has a conversation with Meg where she confesses to being in love with Joe. She tries to talk some sense into her teenage daughter, but Meg wouldn't listen. Instead, with Joe's car approaching, Meg jumps right into the middle of the road and the car runs straight into her.
Meg, what the hell did you do?
I made us the same, Joe. We're exactly alike, you and I. Now we can be together.
Somebody needs to take Meg to the psychiatric hospital to have her head examined. Fortunately, Meg doesn't sustain any serious injuries. Joe then explains things to her.
Look, Meg, I do care for you, but I care for you like I would a niece or a good friend's daughter.
She then apologizes to both Joe and his wife Bonnie. Well, in the end, Bonnie has no qualms with Meg. Well, it's been quite an eventful journey watching Meg fall helplessly in love with every man, or should I say male, that notices her. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe to the channel for more. You can also check out any of our other videos. I'm sure you would love them too.